Hey there, and welcome to the userexperience.org podcast, where I interview people about their thoughts and work in the field of user experience. For this episode, I chatted with Cas Cain, product designer for over 10 years, and she specializes in big data, finance, AI, and cloud-based solutions. This was a long and deep chat, so I split it up into two parts. In the first part, we talked about her journey into UX, the evolution of UX roles, navigating the finance industry as a UX designer, the importance of mentoring, resume tips, and lastly, the impact of AI on jobs. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. All right, welcome, Cassandra.
Hi.
Do you go by Cass or Cassandra?
I go by Cass.
Okay, well, welcome, Cass.
Thanks.
Today on the podcast, we have Cass. This is the userexperience.org podcast where I interview people, working in UX. Just to hear insights, maybe get some tips. And it's like a journey along the way. So thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Real quick for some context, Cass and I, we met at the ADP List mentor night.
Yes.
And you were a mentor there, and then there was a huge line for you.
Yeah.
You're the most popular one. So I was just waiting.
Oh my God.
I was like, man, like, is this worth it? And I was like, okay. And we chatted for a little bit, and then I walked away, and then you're like, oh, wait, but let's connect. And we connected. And then, that led to this. So welcome.
Yeah, thanks for reaching out. That night was pretty interesting. I had gotten a request from ADP List where I mentor to go to this event at Northeastern, and I think I was a little overwhelmed with how many students there were, which was awesome. All grad students looking for advice on their resume.
Mm-hmm.
But at one point I was totally doing 2 to 3 people at a time. So I was doing quick fire resume points, but it was great.
Yeah.
It was nice to meet you there.
Nice. I'd like to, before we really start, like maybe quickly introduce yourself.
Yeah, sure.
And then we'll go from there.
Yeah. So hi, my name is Cass. I'm a user experience designer. I've been working in UX for about 10 years, came from a UI background, and I currently am a product designer at UBS.
Wow.
Yes.
Great. Well, we'll dive into that more as we go. First, just for some... Oh, I just touched the camera. I think it'll be all right.
Okay.
Yeah. So we have a bunch of different themes and topics that we could or would like to cover. Obviously, we're probably not going to cover all of them, or we might cover some other stuff.
Sure.
So I'm just going to name drop so the people listening in can get a general idea of what I wrote down before we started. So one of the things I wrote down is obviously AI, then mentoring, more specifically resume interviews, then also about actually on the job itself, doing agile versus lean agile versus waterfall. Another thing we talked about before we started recording is UX trade-offs.
Right. It's a big one.
That's a big one. And then, back to AI, also evolution of ChatGPT, which we could kind of dissect.
Totally. I'm all about that.
And then, I think also maybe general for context, I think one of your goals that you mentioned before we hit the record button is you want to educate people.
Yes.
And maybe
absolutely.
inspire too.
Yeah, that's totally my goal here.
That's very nice.
Yeah, so.
Yeah. And then, at the end, we'll give some plugs for Cass of how you can reach out and how you can collaborate with her.
Absolutely. That would be great.
Nice.
Cool. Yeah. I'm ready to dive in.
Yeah. Also what I always like to do with guests is kind of get an understanding of, who they are and what experiences shape them. So maybe take me back to 6 or 7-year-old Cass, what she was like.
Yeah, totally. So, I grew up in Connecticut. So for those who don't know where Connecticut is, it's kind of like the no man's land between Boston and New York City. Both my parents are engineers. My dad is a cybersecurity engineer, and my mom has been doing different roles between networking and tech, but kind of like a product manager role most of her life. So I grew up in the 80s. Yes, I'm that old. And what was really interesting is I had 5 computers in my house. Wow. Since I was a kid. And back then, having a computer was a pretty big deal. So I guess kind of transitioning into tech and just always being around it in my family. My brother also works in computers as well in tech. He's a DevOps engineer. But yeah, it felt pretty natural. So I'm actually a pretty big gamer. I grew up really playing video games, addicted. I ended up getting into it competitively later on in my life, but 6 or 7-year-old Cass was totally playing NES games right after school. Like, so
What do you think drove 7 or 8-year-old Cass to do that?
I've always liked the challenge of video games and just the submersion of it. I was way more interested in video games than like playing with Barbie dolls or like anything else around my age that I felt was very stigmatic around gender roles at the time. And like I didn't really care what anyone else thought of it. So that was like one side. And then the other side of me was very competitive into sports. I grew up playing soccer, basketball, softball, got into running for a while. And then eventually in my teenage years, I got into competitive dancing. So it's always been for me a nice mixture of tech, I guess you could say, like the intellectual, logical side, and then the physical aspect of it. So like sports or doing some type of kinetic movement with my body. And that's really kind of been throughout my life now, like a theme of having that type of balance. Because I think you can't just be all brain, right? Like you have to also be connected to your body as well. And yeah, I think that's really kind of the balance I try to have even now, like as almost 38 years old. So yeah, and then I guess like just to keep talking, how I got into design. So being around computers, I was always on them, taught myself really young how to code, believe it or not, like how to hack things, because I was wanting to like kind of piss off my dad. Yeah, so okay, just like going back to the video game thing, back then, if you bought a new game, right, you would have to install it on like the D drive or something, like the CD-ROM drive. Yes, right? This is very old school. And then essentially what it would do is like it would create an exe file, but sometimes like if you wanted to play again, like play the game again, you would have to actually have the physical copy of the CD. So what I learned how to do was to hack into the computer registry and redirect the game to look for, instead of looking for the CD drive, look for the exe file that I ripped off on my monitor. And then I was able to give my friends all a copy, and that way we could all play the game without us having to buy it.
Wow.
Yes, don't arrest me. I did that when I was like 10 or 11.
That's crazy.
So yeah, I was like doing that stuff. And then MySpace came out. And when I was like around...
I've heard of MySpace.
Yes, it was the original first social media, like way before, like I feel like Meta, Facebook, whatever, totally bit MySpace. But yeah, MySpace came out, and what's really cool about MySpace back then for a social media platform is you can actually customize your profile. And like not the way that it is on like Instagram or Facebook now. Like you could actually go in and you would actually be able to see the HTML and CSS code. And I thought it was so cool because it essentially was like a playground at the time in like 2000, 2001 for me to like go in and kind of change everything. And I had always been into art and drawing. So I started like customizing my profile. You could put music on it, and I started like changing it. And I added some of my friends, whatever. And people were like, whoa, that's really cool. Like, how did you do that? And I was like, oh yeah, like I learned how to do some like slight code changes, and my code is probably horrible, but it was like HTML and CSS. And they're like, wow, can you do that for me? And I was like, yes, for a price. So I started like changing people's MySpace, and I basically fell in love with like web design and all that from there. I didn't think I was going to do that originally, like graduating high school. And I was dancing for this company, and they needed a website. And my boss was like, hey, like, do you think you could build us a website? And I was like, I'll try. And I ended up like falling in love with web design at the time. And I ended up going to school for it and moved to New York City. And that's kind of like how my career took off.
Yeah.
So
It's like very niche, but at the same time, it sounds like a story I've heard before from a lot of people.
Oh,
where
really?
I mean, it's like the sense that they didn't really like want to go in there, but they just kind
Yeah.
of like stumbled into it.
Totally.
But then like just followed like their gut and what they like doing.
Yeah,
And just kind of got there.
absolutely. And I think it's like kind of a passion thing, right? I think, you know, just kind of going into what you should do. I think it should be a mixture of passion of what, really sets your soul on fire, so to speak, and then also talent. And for me, coding and designing came very natural. I didn't know I had a talent for it. It took other people to see what I was doing for me to recognize the talent that I have.
Yeah.
Right. So
what, like, so let's say, let's imagine you're like, let's say you're 22 or something, like some random person, and like they're, just got out of college or like about to get out of college. Like, how do you find, what you're good at or what you're passionate about in that sense?
Yeah, I think that you have to be curious. I think you have to have, because I've noticed with people, and obviously this doesn't apply to everyone, but they kind of box themselves in, or they dismiss themselves, and they'll be like, "Oh, I'm not good at that," and it's like, "Well, have you really tried it?"
Yeah, that like resonates with me a lot. Like,
Yeah,
like so I'm doing a group project right now,
right?
And we're like, building a real estate agent, or like a AI system for real estate agents, and like we're thinking of ideas and like, oh, I can't do that. I've never done that before. I'm like, bro, you're 21. Like, obviously.
Oh, it's the other people in your group.
And like, obviously you've never done this before.
Yeah,
Like,
no one has. Like, we're all
exactly.
figuring it out.
But like,
right?
they're like, no. So like, it's like the whole growth mindset thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, we can dive into that later. I just want to like round up like kind of your evolution. So
Yeah, sure.
So just to recap real quick. So like you started playing video games. You started like ripping CD-ROMs or executable files.
Getting into coding,
and then
right?
like making your MySpace account. And then you started doing that for a company you started that you were dancing for.
Yes.
And then you kind of ended up going like to New York City, I guess is what you said.
Yes, I got my degree. I got my associates in what was called web development. Okay. So it was a mixture. And at the time, this, I guess, kind of speaks a little bit about the industry at the time, because there was really no such thing as UX back then. The idea...
Which year abouts was this?
This would have been 2008 to 2010-ish. Wow. Yeah, so there was an expectation that it was really kind of like a UI designer. If I was to put a label on it, that would translate. But you were also expected to code as well. So you were like a web designer / developer.
But there's a clear distinction between that and just pure developers?
There wasn't too much of a distinction back then, believe it or not, in my experience. There were definitely so I guess I'm going to move in now. So after college, I ended up getting a job at an agency, and that was my role. It was literally web design / developer. We definitely had developers there. My focus was front end, so HTML, CSS, jQuery at the time, and just JavaScript, vanilla JavaScript. And there were other people that were working specifically in Ruby, SQL, so more back-end stuff. So yeah, there was a distinction, but it wasn't as segmented as it is now at like major companies that you see with Google. Even now with Google and some of these other, the Mag 7 companies, there's an even distinction between, UX engineer or UX engineer, but even UX researcher and then UX designer. And
what do you think about that? Like, do you like that it's segmented? Like, yeah, I think the word segmented might have a negative connotation to it. But.
Yeah, maybe potentially. I think they make clear distinctions between roles of what's expected, and it works depending on the company, depending on the industry. So Google, for example, has a very strong framework of what they're expected to deliver, and research can mean a number of different items. So I think, again, just to kind of close on that thought, I think it depends on the company and if that works. May not work at like a startup though, right? Startup, you would probably be wearing multiple hats. So
yeah.
So I don't know if you want me to like finish up to where I'm at now. Yeah. So I started working at agency. I did that for about 2 years. I worked on a whole number of different like major companies, MSG, so Madison Square Garden, did some stuff with Game Show Network. I'm trying to remember. Oh, I did a lot of sports stuff. So NHL, I was working on like some of their micro websites and doing design work for
micro websites.
Yeah, like smaller websites, like websites for just like a very specific event or just kind of like a promotion that they had going on, not really anything with like the main site, NHL.com.
Okay.
And after that, I decided to do freelancing for about 2 years. I wanted to try it out. I had a number of different clients. And when I was freelancing, I think that really helped me build up how to really do project management. Because since I was like essentially responsible for myself.
Okay.
And then from there, I ended up starting a job in finance. And I've pretty much been in finance ever since. I worked on more of the buy side. So doing kind of research around projects and products related to shorting. And that app ended up getting bought by Bloomberg. It's a very specific part of finance. And then I moved into the other end, very specific part of finance, which is quantitative finance.
Okay. Quant.
Yes, quant.
Are you a quant?
I am not a quant.
Do you interact with quants?
I did interact with quants. They are a very special and awesome group of people, like all PhD mathematicians, which was cool.
Yeah. My question that I wanted to ask a while back is like, how is the finance field, like how's UX in finance different than in other fields that you've been in?
I mean, I've been working in finance for so long. I might be a little bit biased because I haven't worked in other tech roles really, I guess, outside of finance since I've been working in UX. But from what I hear, so finance has a lot of compliance, right? And this is where we would potentially take like more of a waterfall approach with things. Things can take a long time with finance, even with government and healthcare, just because of all the regulation that's around it. So I would say that it's slow moving. It's not.
That seems really frustrating
for everyone. It can be. There's also the idea of really exploring all the possibilities before we make a decision. So
from like a risk perspective?
From a risk perspective, from a tech stack perspective.
I guess that feeds into like what we were talking about before we recorded about like going in, like all in and like 100% and like doing your best.
Totally.
Yeah.
So just to give context to that, I was telling Oliver that you should give 1,000% into one thing instead of trying to do everything. But I mean, I guess with my current role and other roles in finance, there's an idea of building the right thing, but I also feel like the right thing could be a timing opportunity that could be missed if you're shipping it slow.
Yeah.
So it's, like,
because I'm like super entrepreneurial, so
right.
If I see an advantage, like I want to grab that,
Totally.
So,
and I think it's okay sometimes because the industry is slow to adapt. But I wouldn't recommend working in finance off the bat for like a new designer.
I'm like applying to internships, and I have a call like next week. It's not fine. No, that one is not finance. That's cybersecurity. But I was looking at other opportunities because obviously there's money and opportunities in finance.
Yeah.
But I'll take that into consideration.
It depends too. Like if you're working on front end kind of products, it might be a little bit faster.
Yeah.
I'm completely working on internal tools on like in the back end in research, and it is, for lack of a better word, slow and egregious. But I do appreciate it. So it's taught me a lot.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah. So that kind of brings me up to where I'm at.
Very nice. And and now like, I mean, the reason we met is because you're also mentoring on the side.
Yes.
I'd like to hear more about that. How'd you get into it? Why do you do it? Because you do it on the weekends too, like.
Yeah, I do. Yeah. Thanks for bringing that up. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like mentoring, kind of like fell into my lap, so to speak. I was doing a couple of online courses. So I finished a software engineering bootcamp at Columbia University back in 2021. And I already had coding experience, but I really wanted to learn more about building full stack applications. And a lot of the people that were taking the class at the time, they really didn't know anything about code. So I like kind of naturally stepped up to run sessions, to like have collaboration sessions where people like we could code together. And like I ended up being responsible for that because I want people to succeed, I think, more than anything. And it was a great experience. I felt like people looked up to me. A lot of people, we were pretty much all able to graduate from the program, which was very tough. It was about 6 months of full stack coding. And after it was over, I was like, hey, I think I could like do this. Like, I think I have like enough skills and, you know, real world applications to be able to like help people out. So I started mentoring in 2023 originally with this small company called Rookie Up.
Okay.
I don't know if they're like still around or that popular. I actually haven't like followed up with it, but I had a couple of students that were on there, and it was the way that it was set up was supposed to be like a long-term weekly or bi-weekly check-in with one person. And I found with that program that people were really overwhelmed. They weren't able to keep up with life and also like with the program. So I was like, okay, I don't think this is working.
The students that were getting tutored,
yes,
but they couldn't keep up with like once a week check-ins.
They could keep up,
but...
right? And this isn't saying anything of them, right? But some of them were trying to get into UX, and there was kind of a template on what they should be meeting the requirements for, almost like a homework on a weekly basis, and they would just be so overwhelmed, and they would just be like, I don't know how to do this, like I'm struggling, I would meet them on the call and they'd be like, I haven't had the time to do this. So I was a little frustrated with that too. And then I had gotten someone, I forgot who it was, but essentially around this time last year, matter of fact, last week was my 1-year anniversary with ADP List. But yeah, somebody reached out to me, I think it was, and asked me if I wanted to like be on this platform for mentoring. And I had seen other people on the platform before. I was like, oh, this is interesting. So ADP List has multiple types of tech people on it. Like there's data analysts, there's product managers, there's UX designers, which I think is like the biggest number of mentors they have on it. And people can just book one-off sessions. Like maybe just somebody needs to come in for advice and you just book a one-off session. So I've had a nice mix of, you know, people that are booking me for that just to get advice, or they want their resume fixed or updated, or versus people that need something longer term.
Yeah. Is that something you want to dive more into, like resumes? Because that's like at least one of the things that you're like, at least for me, like my experience. So just for context again, at that ADP List, I think you're like, you had a piece of paper on your desk that said like resume tips and stuff, and like everyone was there. So like I think right now, like a lot of people put a lot of focus and energy into their resumes.
Totally.
Which makes sense. So I'm happy to hear like how, just like any tips and stuff, and also how has like the whole resume industry changed over time? Because like when I came to the States 2 months ago, that was the first time I heard about ATS, if I'm even pronouncing that correctly.
Yes, ATS.
Yeah, like that's a completely new field for me, and also like AI, you know, changing all of that as well. So yeah, I'm just interested to hear your thoughts and any advice you have.
Yeah, it's crazy. First of all, I feel like AI has changed the game as far as resumes. So I guess just to talk about the tech industry in general a little bit, is there's been a lot of people that are moving into the tech industry, even in UX. And I think it's great. I'm glad to see so many people passionate about it, but it's getting a surge of new graduates and that, you know, are starting fresh, that don't have too much experience, and they're looking to land positions. So what companies have done to filter out potential applicants for a new job is they're using something called ATS. I forgot exactly what it stands for. Sorry. But essentially it's like an AI type of reader that's going to scan keywords in your resume and based on the job description, see how much internally there is a match. And depending on that score, that's going to determine whether you do or don't get to your resume in front of the hiring manager.
Wow.
So a lot of people get rejected automatically.
I think the sad part about that is like even like aside from that process is like the lack of like transparency and also the lack of people even knowing. So
Yes.
like they're like, oh, maybe I should have gotten a higher grade, and it's like no, like it's
Yeah.
literally just a couple words and like keyword tagging or whatever.
Yeah.
But like one of the cool things, just sorry to interrupt, but like I saw there's websites where you can upload. I think you even showed it to me.
Yes.
You can upload your thing. So
Yeah.
I'm thinking it's just like AI system versus AI system, and like where like you know like you have one that's like trying to optimize to like
Yeah.
have a high score, and like at one point like what are we even doing, you know? But like
Right.
yeah,
Yeah. It's like Chat GPT versus Skynet.
exactly.
Yeah, no, I was actually surprised too with how many people are not aware of it. So I guess I can dive in a little bit to like I wrote an article recently on Medium, and this kind of was to the mentorship night they were talking about, just on like 7 common resume mistakes that I see. So first of all is not optimizing for ATS. I think of this as the biggest one. So there are websites like jobscan.co is one where essentially what you do is you upload your resume and the job description of the company that you're trying to apply for, and it will give you that match that I said. And I've heard
And the website is JobScan.
yeah, JobScan, there's a few of them. If you look up like ATS scanner or ATS reader, it should come up. There's a couple of them. That's just the first one that comes to the top of my head. Not promotion, not affiliated. Yeah, so optimizing for ATS. Now, what does also that mean besides the keywords? It's also making sure that your resume doesn't have more than one column. So the way that the resume reader works, or ATS, is it reads left to right. So if you're having more than one column, you could have like one paragraph where it's saying one thing, and then it'll bleed into the next paragraph, and it comes off completely discombobulated.
Yeah, I feel like AI could solve this pretty easily. Where like, you know, if they just made a better ATS, but like,
Yeah,
you know,
maybe because it would have to then identify that there are frames or boxes.
I think it can do that. If
It
you show it
could.
to like ChatGPT or you know Gemini and stuff, it'll see it. But I'm getting ahead of myself.
Yeah, so optimizing for ATS is one. The second one I've noticed, and it would just be so surprised at this, is like people are missing their basic information on there. I was really surprised. A lot of resumes like don't have their portfolio link. They don't have their phone number.
Like, how do people react when you tell them that? Like, hey, where's your phone number? They're like, oh, oops, or what are they?
Well, I for the phone number, I'm a little bit more specific about because some people don't want their phone number on the internet. So I say to them this, I'm like, if you're posting this resume on your portfolio, it's fine if you don't have a phone number, if you want that type of privacy. But when you submit for a job application, you absolutely need to have your phone number. Like, that's like number one. And then obviously your email, your portfolio link, and your LinkedIn. And finally, it should also say your location. So that's a big one I notice that people miss. And even then, they don't have, like, if they're open to remote, if they're open to relocation. So I always tell them, you know, especially for new grad students, if you're willing to relocate, say that you're willing to relocate. Right? So, yeah. That's the other one too.
Yeah.
Just going down the list. So number 3 is not actually having the title that you're applying for. So if it's a senior UX designer, say on your resume, senior UX designer. Like, it should match as much as possible. The whole goal of the resume is to get your resume in front of the hiring manager. It's like going back to video games. It's literally like you trying to beat the ATS system.
Yeah.
So having that match, right? Having the title there, making sure things are in line, that's definitely something that you want to optimize as much as possible.
Yeah. Which is why tools like JobScan are like super great because you can see like tangible results and like progress.
Yeah, it should show you on there the best ways to optimize it. But these are just things I tell too. And the thing is, it's going to change depending on the job you're applying. So what I do is I have a base resume, on just maybe the one that lives on my portfolio site or whatever. And then I really will go ahead and tweak it depending on the job that I'm up. Now, granted, I haven't been applying to jobs for a while. I think I've applied to a couple. But yes. but yeah, like that's how I handle it. And it's a pain, like it's time consuming. But wouldn't you rather spend the time ahead of time tweaking something than getting rejected by 100 companies because you're sending them all the same resume? And newsflash, they can tell when you're blasting your resume to 100 different companies. So yeah.
Yeah, it's like that balance. I mean, you don't want to spend like 2,000 hours on one
No.
application.
Right. You totally want to tailor it. The other thing I've seen is not quantifying your experience. So a lot of people get into this habit, and I'm totally guilty of this too. Actually, I didn't know this. Like I had to be told better.
And I heard this is like a cultural thing as well. Like I heard that I think it was in England. No. Yeah, I don't know. Like there was a place where they would focus more on like your personality traits and like your perspective.
Yes, it's big in Europe, right?
Yeah. Whereas in the States or maybe England, they focus much more on like, what you're saying, quantitative stuff. And like a friend of mine, he said that like he was blasting his CV out to like hundreds of companies and no one was reacting. He talked to a coach or like a tutor, like a mentor like yourself. They were like, no, you got to
quantify it. Yeah.
And he did that and instantly like the numbers went up.
Totally.
Like,
yeah.
So,
You should quantify everything as much as you possibly can. Now, I'm not saying to like, fib or lie about your experience, but like,
what is fib? Is that
fib is lying.
Okay.
I'm old school.
I'm European. I don't know.
Okay. You learned something new today.
Yeah. Fib. FIB.
So yeah, like if you, for example, if you were working at a company and you had on your resume, I'm just like totally making this up, designed 50 wireframes for X company that was delivered with this product. Like you should try to optimize it more, maybe by saying, you could say like I designed 50 plus wireframes, but what was the impact of that? Yeah. Like that led to what, 50% traffic increase. It led to revenue increase, right? I mean, those to me are like kind of the bottom line when it comes to like quantifying, because money talks, right? Yeah. So having either something that was related to more views or making the company more money or saving the company more money even. So you worked on a product, you worked on a workflow that reduced friction, or you helped solve, I don't know, 100 CX problems with customer experience, and that led to revenue savings of $1 million. Like these are examples of what you should think about on your resume, because people don't really care about what you did. They care about the impact that you have. So with that being said, I try to do that for every single individual point on my company. I try to have 2 to 3 points where I'm quantifying my impact. And then overall though, the other thing I notice is not having a summary on your resume. So the summary should be kind of like, hey, my name is Cas, right?
So that was going to be my question before you started on that.
Yeah.
Like, I wanted to ask, because like again, for context, I showed my resume to you.
It was just one of the things I said that you need to have.
Yeah, and then you had like a really cool formula. Yeah. You had like sentence 1, sentence 2. Like, I mean, like, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I'll break into my formula. So
this is patented, by the way.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, this is the Cas like profile resume summary. Yeah. So the first sentence. So what a resume summary is, it should be a brief introduction. It shouldn't be more than 600 words. So keep it pretty short and succinct. But essentially, what you want to do is you want to introduce yourself. So I don't think you need to say like, hi, my name is Cas on your resume, but you could say I'm a master Nielsen Norman Group certified UX designer that has been working in X industry, so fintech for me for the past 10 years. So like introduce yourself, introduce your role, right? Your current role. And I mean, I guess if you're like trying to apply for that position, it should be like the name of that position, right? So if I was applying to a senior UX designer, I would say I'm a, certified senior UX designer. And then talk about your experience, right? That should be the first sentence, like a nice little wrap up. And and then the second, you should talk about have like a win, like your biggest win. So try to take once you quantify all of those points underneath your job history, take the sum of those of those like quantitative points and make like the overarching kind of like your grand slam, your hook, so to speak. So for me, it's I've helped businesses generate $20 million for NASDAQ and Bloomberg, right?
You should put that in your pocket. Keep it for yourself.
Yeah, I know, right? Maybe a little bit, but yeah, like that's like kind of my biggest win, or like your biggest win, so to speak.
Yeah.
So that's sentence 2. And then really sentence 3 and 4, because I really think like 600 words is really only like 4 sentences ish. I might talk about a soft skill that I have, and like, but this would be really tailored towards what that position is. So the first two, so just to recap, the first 2 sentences, I'm introducing myself and I have like my biggest win statement. The last 2 sentences in there, I'm really kind of customizing it for the job position. So if they're looking for somebody, I don't know, that is good with design systems, for example, and that can lead accessibility, I would change those last 2 sentences something around those lines. And by the way, I totally use ChatGPT for this, on like something that they're looking for. Yeah. Right.
So I guess my issue with this one, like, it sounds really good, but like a lot of, like, for example, for me, like, I don't have 10 years of experience, you know?
Right.
So like, it's harder for me to like get that big win somewhere and put it in the portfolio or like in the summary. Like, what is your advice for that in those cases?
Yeah. So what students can do. So first of all, I think you shouldn't hide the fact that you're new in the industry. I think there needs to be a balance between like what you're capable of, like what you worked on potentially in school or some of your projects, or if you've done internships. So yeah, like it shouldn't have this big kind of expectation. Maybe you could talk a little bit more about your what you're passionate about, or also try to get it more in line potentially with the job that you're applying for. So if it's like a junior UX position, and you can talk maybe more about your soft skills, because to me, believe it or not, I think UX is 70% soft skills. I'm really going to put that number out there. Like, I'm going with that. Yeah.
70%.
70%. Really, truly. Like, I mean, think about it. Like, a lot of it is collaboration. It's communication. Yeah. It's, you know, people are going to ask you why you made that design decision, and you have to critically think. You have to defend your work. You have to be able to, you know, do trade-offs. Yeah. Right? So
I have a bunch of questions and I'd love to dive into that. I think for now, if you're okay with it, we'll take a quick break.
Yeah, sure.
A quick ad break, and we can get some water and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then, and then we can dive into that.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Great.
All right. Sweet.
All right. Well, that's the end of the first part of my chat with Cas. I hope you liked it. If you did, please leave a review. In the next part of my chat with Cas, we talked about navigating team dynamics, defending the value of UX, the future of AI, and its impact on the job market.
Tune in for part 2.